Hello everyone, I'm Colin Canet. Today I got something a little bit different. I know I say that a lot, but today is a little different because today I've got some tips from subscribers just like you, but I've also got a couple of jigs. So mixing it up a little bit today and giving you a little bit of variety. So let's get started. This tip is from Jeffery, and Jeffery suggests that these days we can purchase fairly inexpensively rechargeable lights. In my case, this has a battery pack inside. It just uses AAA batteries, and for people that have dark workshops, this is a really handy thing to do. Now, this one doesn't cast a ton of light, but you know, if you were around a tool, maybe a sharpening tool or something like that, this will add enough light. I also happen to have a very well lit workshop, so you can't see the brightness as well. So there's different kinds of things like this, and I thought it was a really good idea. But look, you know, the other thing, I've used these from time to time, and you know, when you look at this one, let me show you, you know, that's shows you the brightness of that, but look at this one. This is a headlamp, and I've learned the hard way that if you spend more money on these, you get way more battery life and way more power. And just to give you an idea, look at the difference. That's kind of the difference you can get in power. So no reason that you couldn't use one of these, a headlamp, in your workshop. You know, I know it sounds silly, but you know, people have dark workshops sometimes, and just to add a bit more light, this is a very good idea. And these things, batteries in these will last a long time because you're not going to leave them on all the time. But you know, the other thing, and I did a video on this a few years ago. I think I got this from Woodturner's Wonders turning place. This is actually a plug-in, as you can see, plugs into the wall, but look at the power on that. And because these are all LEDs, these things last forever. So really good thought, Jeffery. You know, you can go the portable way, and this one's nice because it's got a little clip on it. You could magnetize that as well, but it's got a clip on it, or you could use the headband. So lots of ways to get good light so you can see what you're doing. This tip comes from Byron, and Byron located at Harbor Freight a sanding pad or a sanding disc that he said works perfect as a push block. Now, I couldn't find that, but what I did find was something similar. I think these are called floats, and I believe they're used for tiling, but I know somebody will upgrade my knowledge on that in the comments. And it actually works fairly well, but you all know what I would do, and that is I would add some, you know, there's different versions, different thicknesses of this stuff. I would add some anti-skid material to the bottom, and if you did that, you would have a super push block. That would work really well. And you know what I would do? You know, I did a video on this a few years ago where I made my own push blocks, and I haven't even replaced the anti-skid material on this, and all I did was staple it. This is a plywood base. I made my own handles. You could do the same thing, just have contact cement, a little piece of wood on there, and take that, wrap that around, and just staple that on there, and that's all you would need, and you would have an excellent, a nice, big, handy. And here's a situation where a handle is a good idea, and you can release that, get away from that. I talked about handles in the past, but this is a place where you could actually use that and it would be good. So thanks for that, Byron. That was a great tip. So this tip comes from Doug, and Doug has sent a picture of a jig, and in this case it's a push block, and he's basically used a 2x4 with a little tab on the bottom, and I've made these before, and of course we always glue them on here. We never use nails down there, so in case we hit a saw blade. And I like the idea, Doug. What I'm not really crazy about, I'll be honest with you, is I'm not crazy about the dowel on there in the picture that you sent. I just think it adds an element of instability to it. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, it should be at an angle. Well, I did that too. And there it is there. And you know what? It's a tiny bit better, but I'm still not crazy with the angled dowel in there. Look, there's nothing wrong with doing just the 2x4 with the tab there and just holding with your hand. You've got lots of get lots of grip there. And when you're cutting anything, you're always going to be, whatever it is that you're cutting, you're only ever going to be a half tooth above the material anyway. So, even if you don't have a handle on there, your hand is nowhere near that blade, and you have a very good solid way of holding that, and you're still 2 inches above the blade, and that's a highly safe push block to use. And if you cut into it, if you end up cutting it off a couple times, you flip it over and you've got another one down there. So it works double duty. But while we're on one of my favorite topics, which is push blocks, I did a video not long ago. You saw that. I absolutely hate these chicken's foot. These are dangerous to use on the table saw, and I see people using them. But I have a variety of push blocks, push sticks that I have. This one I call my grabber, and basically it's just a piece of plywood. I've got materials, anti-skid material on the bottom, and what I use it for is for when I need to do something that's really narrow, like a narrow piece of wood like this. I can run that through my table saw like that. Of course the blade's too high right now, but run that through my table saw, and because it's grabbed in there and it's up against this, it's always secure in there. I've never ever had a problem with that. So for thin material that you're running through the blade, that's a really additional push block or push stick that you can use. Of course, there's my standard push stick with a little notch in the front so that you can push material out of the way so that it doesn't flip back at you. But I even have other push blocks as well, or push sticks as well. Here in my cupboard, I have thin ones, so when I'm pushing really thin material, you can see the difference there. I've got really thin ones. So lots of different things you can do, and Doug's idea of using a 2x4 is a great one. Nothing wrong with a push block like that or a push stick like that. This tip comes from Paul, and Paul sent a picture of a little jig that looks similar to this. The picture that he sent, he actually had a piece of tape on there so he could use that as a measurement. And of course, the whole point of this thing is to be able to measure the distance, how high your table saw blade is. And that's perfect for when you're cutting dados or slots, splines, all sorts of things. You need that. Now, I didn't have a tape, the little piece of tape to buy to put in there, and I don't usually buy those much anymore because I have different things. But look, when I saw this, I thought, you know what, this is a perfect example of where you would use your measuring bars. Now, I typically use my measuring bars for setting up my blade height, but the problem with a lot of table saws is this gets in the way. You can't measure from here because your insert is often lower than the deck of your table saw, so you have to make sure that you're on the deck doing it like this. And if you're measuring from this side, that's pretty hard to do, and that's where these little measuring bars come in super handy. And if you look closely, you'll see that I have some lines already marked on there, and that's because I took some of my measuring bars out of here and I marked them to typical heights that I would use. But you know what? The other thing that I found would be really handy, if you put a piece of masking tape on there, really easy to do, and in this case it might be just temporary, but maybe say you're doing a different height that's not on there, and that's why I love these measuring bars, is because you can stack them like this. So I've got a half and 3/8 and a quarter, and if that's a height that I'm working at, now that I can take that over to my table saw blade, raise the blade up to that height, and if I'm working on a project and I know that's a height that I want, later on I can just take that away if I want, and it's that simple. You just replace whatever's on there. Quick and easy to do. Well, that concludes my video for today. All sorts of great ideas sent in by subscribers just like you. Things that we can all do to make our life a little bit easier in the workshop. And speaking of making life a little easier in the workshop, when I was setting up this little tool and using my measuring bars, it reminded me of a video that I did a few months ago on tools that absolutely frustrated the life out of me. And one of them was a set of very expensive, I might add, measuring bars that I purchased that I tried to use for months and months, and I finally just had to give up and go back to something quick and simple. If you want to have a look at that video, maybe you'll get a chuckle out of it. It's right here. So I'm Colin Canet for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching.